So recently I got to learn about a bunch of jewelry and how jewelry is made and the process of making jewelry. And I know that this might not be like a very interesting or new kind of information for you if you have been into jewelry in terms of production. But if you haven't, I think that this is going to be really interesting for you to find out about, or at least talk about. I am so annoyed to find out what kind of materials all of those luxury brands are using for their jewelry. I know that there's a difference between fine jewelry and fashion jewelry or costume jewelry. However, when you are on a website that sells a bunch of luxury brands, it is not separated into those categories. At least most of the time it isn't. Fine jewelry, it's usually more expensive, obviously, but it's usually also made out of better materials. I just could not believe my eyes when I looked at a bunch of different brands that I've been purchasing from in the past, what kind of materials they were using and how much they were charging for it. And I know that brands do have a value in capitalist society, obviously. But it is one of those things where I feel like with a lot of luxury brands, especially clothing luxury brands, oftentimes when we go to Chanel, for example, we expect that if they have a material used in their suit that looks like silk, it would be silk. And if they're using something that looks like wool, it would probably be wool, right? Let me show you a few examples of luxury brands selling things for like an insane price while using materials that are ridiculously cheap. The materials that basically Claire's are using. Okay, maybe it's not as bad, but still. For example, these Gucci earrings. The name on the website says Gold Bee logo earrings. The price is $845. When you see this price and you see the name, you're familiar with their products, you're familiar with the fact that they're probably using good materials if it costs $800, because I'm gonna tell you, these earrings are made out of metal, not even specified which type, and glass. Not even like a proper stone that's been developed in a lab or something, it's just glass, straight up. It's ridiculous. And brass is basically that metal that if you wear it during the day and it gets even a little bit wet, just wearing it in general, even without water touching it, it would go green, like when your skin kind of turns green because of the rings that you're wearing. That's basically brass. It does oxidize. I don't think that this design is revolutionary. I don't think it's worth anything, really. I don't think it's that good. Still, they think that this is an appropriate price. What they could do is at least use proper materials and then charge $1,000 for them, but at least you wouldn't be buying something that's gonna turn green in like 2 weeks. I looked at a bunch of different brands, so let's look at Versace. Price, $675. This is what they look like. It seems like they would be really big, but the size is actually just 2 inches, 5 centimeters or so like this big or something like that. So they're not massive that they would have to use a lot of materials. And then you look at the description, materials, brass.
Bullshit.
The upcharge that they're doing is 1,000%. Because now I know how much it would cost them to produce this. An upcharge of 1,000% for this. I would understand if they were charging up to like 1,000% upcharge. Like I would still think that it's extremely greedy and kind of pathetic. But I would still understand if the materials were at least good materials. At least plated with gold or something. Like how is it not even plated? Even smaller brands that have earrings that are like $90 or something like that have their stuff plated if they even use brass. $1,150 for a bracelet, Versace. So let's see what kind of materials they're using, right? Brass. $1,200 for brass? Seriously? I mean, I know that we live in a capitalistic society, I get it. But at what point do we look at a piece of jewelry and we go, I don't think it's worth it, and I think that it's kind of ridiculous that we're even paying for it. It's one thing to pay a lot of money for something that's at least going to last a long time, that you could wear it a lot. I just don't understand. Like, even if you have a lot of money, why would you pay for brass? Even if you're filthy rich and $1,000 is literally like $1 to you, I still don't think that it makes sense to buy this because it's brass. Why wouldn't you buy actual gold then if you have that much money, right? So who is the demographic for this? Explain it to me, because clearly people who don't have the money to be paying for your fine jewelry, they could easily buy proper 24K gold bracelet. Maybe not as chunky as this one, but they could buy a bracelet like that that's full on gold that would actually have value for a long time and that's not going to tarnish. Anywhere else, there's a lot of brands that would offer it. So what are you offering? Is it the designs? They're not worth that much. There's a lot of places that offer similar things. So if it's not the design, then what is it? Materials? Quality? Where is it? I don't see it. $655 for a pendant, metal and glass. They couldn't even use an actual pearl. Pearls are not that expensive. I'm not saying that you need like a very high quality pearl. You could just use a regular pearl, but a real one, and you would still turn in so much profit. So what is the problem? Why do you have to use glass? Good enough. They'll buy it anyway, those peasants. $935. It's a waist chain. The name again is Gold Infinity Chain Charm Belt. You kind of assume like, oh, it's $1,000. It's gold. Maybe like at least it's coated. At least it's plated, right? No, of course not. It's just brass. Straight up. What is this? With Swarovski, for example, you know, Swarovski is called crystals, right? So I thought that the crystals that they're used were kind of like cubic zirconia. They aren't. They do have cubic zirconia now that's like Swarovski zirconia, whatever, which is, I think it's more decent than what they actually use most of the time, which is Swarovski crystal. Swarovski crystal is just glass, turned out. And until 2012, this information is like really blew my mind. I was shocked by it. Until 2012, they were using lead in their crystals. They straight up put 30% of each crystal was lead up to 2012. When did we find out that lead was poisonous and causes deformities, developmental issues and stuff like that, especially if pregnant person is around lead paint or lead in general? When did we find out about that? 1970s? That's what I think. If you know the exact dates, please let me know, but I thought it was like around 70s, 80s. Swarovski just went on with using lead until 2012. How did that happen? It's just ridiculous. I didn't know that this is the thing. I did not know that that's what they were selling up until this point. Another thing that I want to mention in this video and that I want to kind of like have a conversation about, I'm going to expand on it in the podcast because I really want you guys to give me your opinions on this because I don't know how I feel about it, but Chanel has sued so many brands in the past few years, especially brands that are vintage stores, you know, the ones that are repurposing hardware from the past, like they repurpose Dior, YSL, Chanel, a bunch of other things like that. Like if the clothes are too messed up by that point that you can't really wear them anymore, but the hardware is still fine, they would like take the buttons off, for example, and repurpose them into jewelry, which the jewelry would technically be considered fashion jewelry, because regardless of what Chanel is saying, I looked up what their buttons are made out of regular metal, the tarnishes and stuff like that. It's nothing special. They do have a lot of intricate designs for them, so the factories that are working on them, they make each one of them with like a bunch of stones or whatever, but it's all cheap materials. It's not something that would be considered fine jewelry if you were to make it into a piece of jewelry, okay? Chanel had multiple lawsuits go out in the past few years attacking different types of vintage stores that are reselling their stuff. At this point, it's kind of like getting a little bit ridiculous because they were saying that they cannot control the quality of the piece of jewelry.
Fucked up. Funny, but fucked up.
That the vintage stores are selling, so they cannot afford to be associated with it, so they want those people to pay for the damage to their brand and for using the likeness of their logo and stuff like that, which is, to me, it seems ridiculous, mostly because, like, what are we supposed to do? There is a law that protects people who purchase something from being sued if they want to sell that thing that they purchased. So if I buy a shirt, I have the right to sell it if I want to. Now, the vintage stores, they never claimed that this was Chanel jewelry as much as they said that it's an authentic Chanel button, for example, but it's remade, repurposed. Obviously, those people that lie about it could get sued and it would be fair because it's like counterfeit stuff or whatever. But those people that are using their pieces that have been in circulation and they're repurposing parts of it, that cannot be illegal in any shape or form. When I tell you that this is kind of, from my perspective, ridiculous from their part to be claiming that people cannot sell their products after they've been in circulation or whatever, they got even bolder with it and then they sued somebody, an eBay seller, who was selling just vintage Chanel for $56 million. A lot of people were talking about this. This is not a trademark issue. If Chanel wins, then every company out there could sue everyone on eBay, Etsy, any other store, even people who are selling things in their garage sales. It was really strange to just keep on seeing those articles pop up here and there about Chanel suing this small vintage store and then this person who was just selling their stuff on eBay. It makes sense if they were suing somebody who was saying that they were making Chanel stuff or they were selling authentic Chanel stuff and it isn't. But in the case where people are just reselling vintage Chanel, this cannot be an issue at all. Like, they have no legal grounds for this. So this comes off as really greedy, right? And then everyone was kind of like confused as to what the hell is happening and why this is happening. Then they had another lawsuit with the Real, this vintage store. I have no idea about all the specifics of the case, but what I do know is that a bunch of documents from Chanel have leaked where they basically are talking about how the new consumers are not interested in buying as much new Chanel as the old consumers were. So they're saying a new world with no borders, clients gaining expertise and versatility, brand loyalty in decline, and style over brand are among the developments in the consumer behavior that pose a threat to Chanel's business model and beliefs. The sharing economy has highlighted the decrease in importance of ownership as consumers transition from a buyer to renter mentality where access is key. So they started kind of getting really concerned with the fact that people don't buy new Chanel as much. There's still value being exchanged, but it's outside of their direct business with the consumer, right? So they're saying the evolution in perceptions is the key reason behind those astonishing numbers, Chanel said in the documents, referring to the global luxury secondhand market size and potential, which KD Market Insights estimated will reach 52.3 billion by the end of 2024. The new collaborative consumption actors have deeply changed consumers' perception and approach. Selling a secondhand luxury product was before seen as a last resort. It's now seen as a piece in itself of one's consumption strategy. So in the last 3 years, Chanel in the US has targeted secondhand industry with 3 lawsuits and 15 cease and desist letters for trademark violations, such as false association, false endorsement, false sponsorship, and unfair competition. You are the biggest, arguably the biggest designer brand in the world, and you are concerned about vintage stores. I know why you're concerned. I've seen your latest collections, that's why you're concerned. I've seen that you have to utilize that poor Jennie from Blackpink as much as possible because she's the only one who can bring any young customers to Chanel. And one of the problems is the fact that, for example, with their fashion jewelry that Chanel is providing, their stuff is also not plated. I don't know if they still have it in circulation. I'm not entirely sure. Chanel is kind of one of those brands that doesn't want to be sold online. They don't want to be accessible. They want to be all fancy or whatever. But like, what's so fancy about not being sold online? You're just being annoying at this point. Like, everyone shops online. How old are you? Is everyone at Chanel 70 years old? I don't understand. In any case, their products, especially their fashion jewelry, was made out of the same kind of materials. Like, it wasn't plated, it wasn't silver or gold or whatever, and they were charging a lot of money for it. There was also this moment where people online were showing their studs. Do you remember those like CC studs with pearls? And they were showing that the pearls keep fucking falling out and that it's just not good quality earrings, you know? What I want to say with this video is that go out there and find proper designers that create jewelry that's made out of proper materials, and if you're gonna be buying brass, at least don't pay $1,000 for it, you know? If you're gonna buy something that's gonna tarnish, don't pay that much money to them. They need to get a grip. They need to get their shit together. This is just ridiculous, and considering how these documents that leaked just sound like so much whining, you know? You're a massive corporation, you can't figure it out. You need to whine about it and be like, people don't want to buy our products directly from us anymore. They don't want to invest into our company directly. What are we gonna do with all of our brass that costs $2,000? Figure it out. Anyway, I'm so sorry about being so ranty. Basically, let me know your opinion about this. If you don't agree with me, fair enough. But like, explain yourself why you don't agree with me, you know, if you don't. If you have something else to share, if you have some kind of insight into this type of thing, into this topic, please let me know. I will continue the conversation in the podcast and kind of pick out some of the information that you're gonna provide in the comments to discuss in the podcast. I just find it really interesting and I want to talk more about it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you really soon with a new video. Bye!